bit squirmish.
And there are some sensitive topics included.
Yep.
And also, we apologize if we say the wrong pronoun for Chris. We're not doing it intentionally. We mean no ill will. And thank you so much. Enjoy. Welcome to this episode of Trash Taste. I'm Connor, and I'm here with the boys as usual, Joey and Gant. And today we have an interesting guest, a rather unusual one, I might add, as well, Gino Samuels. Hi, Gino. How you doing?
I'm okay.
Just okay?
Just okay?
I'm very okay.
So, there's probably going to be a lot of people who don't know who you are or what your work is. Some people might be familiar with what you do. You do a YouTube series on the very notorious and infamous Chris Chan.
Yes, I do. It's a very extensive series.
Yeah.
That's
very
the way.
extensive.
That's the way to explain
Extensive
it,
is an understatement from what I can tell.
So, obviously there's, if you don't know what Chris Chan is or the lore behind Chris Chan, it's a very strange tale of the internet and one that I don't feel qualified to talk about.
I don't think any of us are qualified to talk about.
How would you explain what you do to somebody who doesn't understand anything about Chris Chan or the internet, essentially?
Okay, well, I talk in depth about Chris Chan. And if you don't know, Chris Chan is a certain person who has received a lot of attention over the years from various online forums and online groups for his and then later her unusual actions. And
that is an understatement.
Unusual actions. Yeah.
that's a very brief introduction, a very simplified introduction there.
Right.
Yeah, also has been bullied a lot.
Yeah.
I guess you could say he's kind of like the forerunner of several online groups,
right.
Several online, I guess, I don't know what you...
It's so difficult to describe like what he's all about, right?
You kind of have to go chronologically year by year to like really get the full story, honestly.
Yeah. So this is... go on.
Yeah, because I had not heard of Chris Chan until like I think a few months ago, where Connor introduced me to one of your videos, and I was because he couldn't believe that I hadn't heard of Chris Chan as someone who had been on the internet. He was just like, "What? How have you never heard of Chris Chan?"
Gant's been doing YouTube since which year now?
2007.
So basically the start of YouTube.
Yeah.
I found it. How dare you be on this? How dare you be on this website and not know anything about Chris Chan?
See, because like I knew of things associated with Chris, which we'll obviously get into later in the video. But like when I heard the name Chris Chan, like obviously knowing because I'm Japanese, right? So when I immediately think something Chan, I think oh, it's just like a character or like something like that. And then when I realized that Chris Chan was an actual person, I was like, oh, okay, now this completely changes things.
So the reason why this episode came about and why Gino is here today is that I've been watching Gino's series. Now Gino does a kind of a mountain task of documenting everything. And I think what episode are we on? 59 right now?
59,
is that correct?
Yeah.
So you have made 59 roughly around 30 to 50 minute videos.
How many hours of content have you made? Do you even know?
Of course, many people have calculated already. It's over 40 hours.
I've made
40 hours.
So this is a 40-hour documentary. Michael Jordan is eating his heart out right now.
Yeah, right.
Last Dance, eat your heart out. 40 hours of content, and it is just this very fascinating look into a side of the internet, essentially.
It's like a really interesting, just like case study, isn't it? On just like a person on the internet.
And I think it's just so. There's nothing like it on the internet. And to have just such material, like the sheer scale of it is really daunting. And trying to convince someone to start watching, because the way I try to get people into Chris Chan and this whole thing is not because I don't particularly care about what happens, but it is almost like a TV show at this point, which we can also get about later, whether that's ethical or not and, whatnot. But I get my friends into the documentary. I'm like, please watch this. It's insane.
Like when you like introduced us to Gino's documentary at your place that one time, and I saw that there was like 45 episodes at the time. I think I was like, oh, is this what it feels like to like try and get someone into One Piece?
No, I was about to say the exact same thing. I saw the episode. It was really interesting, and I looked at the rest of the episodes and just the sheer length. And I'm just like, oh no.
It's like I know, because just from watching episode 1, I was like, oh, this is so interesting. I want to watch more. But just like the sheer amount just made me kind of fall back a little bit. It's like, oh my God.
I think I started watching your series around episode 9 or 10. And that's when I started watching basically whenever you uploaded them. And it's been one of those things where the longer it gets, the harder it is to convince people to start
Yeah.
because it gets so daunting. I think what happened the evening I showed these guys the series is that we'd been drinking a bit,
Yeah.
and we were like, "What should we watch?" And I was like, "I know the exact thing to watch at like midnight. Let me put it on."
Yeah, we finished watching all the Super Monkey Ball speed runs, and we were
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
what else can top that? And Chris and Connor was like, watch this.
Yeah, so we started watching it. I don't even know how to begin talking about this topic because it is so difficult to explain if the viewers don't know anything, and I imagine the viewers
Yeah.
don't know much.
Right.
How would you describe Chris to someone who has no idea who Chris is?
Okay, Chris Chan is an autistic individual who through the process of bad parenting and their own afflictions caused themselves to both become a subject of bullying online,
Right.
and also in turn they did not learn to avoid the trolls on the internet, and by addressing them all the time only brought them into a bigger mess.
It
over
is just a
time.
case study of what not to do on the internet.
Right.
Yeah.
In almost every single aspect.
It seems like, for me, from an outsider, because I think out of the three of us, I know the least about this topic. And it just seems, from what I can garner, it's kind of like the perfect storm of someone who is very susceptible to what people say about them on the internet and being trolled, and just kind of the worst trolls possible, egging them on.
Yeah.
And you just see the result from that.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, it says a lot when you can make 40 hours of content and you're not even up to date yet, are you, with the full story?
Not even close.
Yeah, I think there was obviously people might know a lot about the recent news that happened.
Yes.
As Chris Chan or Christine. How do I even say this? This video is
I'm like afraid to like say it out
Yeah.
loud. You know?
had a lot of people like their mother. Unfortunately, Chris. I'm trying my best to say this without getting demonetized.
A lot of people like their mother, but I think Chris
Chris
really
took it to,
likes her mother.
Took it to another level.
Yeah.
We joked, but the reason why it was covered in like a lot of mainstream outlets because it was so
It's trending on
despicable.
Twitter as
It's
well.
like
Yeah.
Christine had sexual intercourse with their mother, who I believe has dementia. Is that correct?
Possibly.
Possibly. Okay, I don't know, but when you see
But
clips,
it's very old, right?
very clips, it's very
At least
concerning.
80, or I think around 80 now.
Yeah.
So.
And it's obviously incest is illegal, and the fact that it is just insane.
Yeah.
It is, and quite frankly, it feels like the worst timeline to be on. It felt like we can get into it later about what happened after, but how do you when you start to introduce the topic of Christine, how do you talk about it to people who have like no idea, who want to know about it, in a sense that you've given the basics of who Chris was back then and how it all started, but how do you describe the documentary that you make?
It's a deep dive into a certain individual that I guess for the most part Chris was mostly known for the videos on YouTube for a very long time, but then I started exploring their Quickie, which is their own dedicated wiki based on like everything they do.
Yeah.
And I found so much amazing information and interactions and content which gets ignored a lot on YouTube. So I decided to compile as much as I could, as much interesting stuff as I could, into video form to make it more digestible on YouTube. And
so you just read all this stuff and you're like, this is so interesting, I want to repackage it in a way that is more accessible.
right, yeah.
Wow.
So how did you get involved in this initially? Like,
Initially, I wanted a video series like mine to exist, but no one had it around, so I decided to make
Make
it
it
myself.
yourself.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
fair enough.
And go.
No, because like I guess what motivated you to get into this kind of, because it seems like there's an entire culture around Chris Chan right now. I totally don't.
Christorians.
Is that what they're
Christorians.
called?
Yeah.
Christorians. What's a Christorian?
Christorian is a person who knows pretty much everything about
Who was a
Chris.
part of Christory? There's a person who was part of Christory.
I just couldn't imagine someone unironically being like, I am a Christorian. Yes.
Professional
That's what I do,
Christorian,
yeah. Do you, I mean, are you technically one? Do you refer to yourself as one, or does it make you
Do you
cringe at the thought
identify
of it?
as a Christorian?
People refer to me as the go-to Chris Jordan at the moment. Yeah.
You sound utter contempt when you say that.
You're the face of all historians right now.
It's a burden I must bear.
You know those memes where it's like the people holding up like the world, the army, and it's they're living like peacefully at the top. It's like Gino Samuel holding up the fabric.
Holding up the wall.
I feel like in some aspects, because you do seem almost, you hate many aspects of it. Is that fair to say?
I wish there was something more to my identity rather than being a Chris Jordan.
Right,
But
of course,
But yeah, of course, I can't blame them because it is like the thing that I'm most known for at the moment, at least.
Yeah.
It is just so, I think when a lot of people see that you've made 40 hours or nearly 60 episodes on something, they do think, what drives a man to do such a thing, to make 60 episodes? And I think if I remember correctly, when you've been doing this, your channel got deleted at some point, right?
Yeah.
So your channel is called Gino Samuel 2.1, plug, link in the description. So I think because it got deleted during the first one, is that correct?
Yes, Gino Samuel 2 was terminated for bullying and harassment.
Right.
And that was for the Chris Chan episodes?
That was the Christian episodes. I was up to part 12 at that point. Yeah.
I think I remember this happening. And I thought you were going to quit, right, at that point, at some point, no?
Yeah, I did quit. I actually made part 13 and then released it on a different video hosting platform. But then after that, I decided, you know what, I'm just not going to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what I want to know is, did you know what you were getting yourself into when you started this project?
Well, at around part 5, I got already 10,000 subs on YouTube. So for that, I made a Q&A video,
Right.
answered some questions. And people asked, how long do you think it's going to be? I said, I'm probably going to get up to date around part 15. So I really had no idea what I was getting into.
Well, yeah, because it's just insane that, because again, I've seen a couple of your episodes, right? And it's just insane because it's like one episode isn't just talking about like one core thing. It's like it's just a compilation of all the things that just happen in chronological order. So
Exactly, yeah.
like on average, like how long does it take to make one Chris Chan episode?
From the start of writing to the publication, maybe 3 to 4 weeks.
Jesus.
Oh my God.
I mean, yeah, like I can't think of the amount of research that has
Yeah.
to go into it, right? Because like,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is your research process for this? 'Cause I wouldn't even know how or where to
Yeah,
start.
do you talk to a lot of people in the community? Do you ask them, hey, what happened if you're not sure? Or like, what is the whole process?
Very rarely I do talk with someone, but mostly I go through the Quickie and then the Kiwi Farms.
What's Kiwi Farms?
Kiwi Farms is a certain website, which is focusing on discussions around people online who do laughable things and are affectionately or unaffectionately referred to as lol cows.
Yeah, because there's a whole website called LolCow as well, right? Which is separate.
That's a different thing.
Yeah, so a different website, but that is like the type of person, generally someone who just makes a lot of drama, does a lot of very questionable things.
Yeah, my understanding of Kiwi Farms and LolCow was always just like a place where people go to like talk drama about certain people and like.
Yeah, where I feel like 4chan is
of it
just
is, yeah.
unfiltered garbage that is sometimes funny but also extremely questionable. I feel like LolCow, Kiwi Farm, very centered on the creators online and very much about people who are doing stuff online, whereas 4chan is just anything.
Yeah, anything goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But was it? Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't Kiwi Farms started like for Chris, like to document Chris?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was originally called
Wow.
Quickie Forums. And
Hey, did you not know that?
I did not know.
Oh,
that.
okay.
there you go. So yeah,
We're gonna learn a lot today, ladies and gentlemen.
So yeah, it was originally called Quickie Forums, and the reason it developed into Kiwi Forums was because it was during a certain dry spell of content from Chris Chan when they were not being active online for like a year or so. People started making subforums about other people who are similar to Chris,
Right.
and then after a while they decided to abandon the Quickie Forums and then get a new domain and call themselves Kiwi Farms, which is apparently a result. It's actually based on a mispronunciation that some other lolcows said about the Quickie Forums. They pronounced it as Kiwi
Kiwi.
Farms.
Oh,
so that's how it started.
Right.
And so Quick is that just Christian Weston Chandler?
Christian Weston Chandler, later.
Which is the name.
CWC.
Right.
Right.
CWC.
And that is essentially the universe, or like what is that? What Christine built? Is that? Correct me on the law. There's so much information; it's
Yeah.
very hard to keep track.
Yes, Chris started building their own world. I guess during their teenage years in late 90s, they developed this concept of Quickville, which is the city of quick, Chris Chan.
So there is
I'm
like
already
this.
lost.
There's just like this whole.
It's a fantastical world.
So
It's a fantastic
you know, like,
world, exactly.
do you know what Sonichu is?
No.
Do you want to explain what Sonichu is? Well, I mean, it's very
I mean, yeah. Okay, so I think Quickful was actually before Sonichu, so it was just like
right.
As a
slotted
result,
into there.
yeah.
But yeah, Sonichu came about as a high school project. Chris was doing a design class where he had to design his own CD, and he wanted to put on Sonic and Pikachu. I can't remember, was it Sonic or Pikachu? And the teacher said you couldn't put in any copyrighted characters.
Right.
So he decided to go around that issue, combine
Okay.
Sonic and
Sonichu.
Pikachu into Sonichu.
And,
So-
and that became like a very iconic meme online.
Yeah, so
Right.
I found out about the whole Chris thing because I knew what Sonichu was. Because you know, being on all sorts of internet forums back in the day, like you would just see Sonichu like out of context or used in.
Yeah, I remember I saw it a lot and had
Yeah.
no
So-
no I just thought it was a ripoff.
Yeah, right. So I thought it was just like one of those like funny memes that someone created, right? And then I realized, oh, Sonichu is linked with this person called Chris Chan. And then that's how I found out about the whole world of Chris. And then I just went deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole, essentially.
So, when you watch your documentary, it starts out, I mean, quite positive, I'd say. Well, not positive, but
Hopeful?
yeah, I'd say hopeful. You get introduced to Chris at the time, and it kind of becomes this like you get to see Chris on TV when very young, right?
Yeah.
When they won a competition, and you're like, oh, okay, it's going pretty well, and then you start to get into some very personal details about Chris, which I always found very concerning. How they were like, how did you get this information?
Yeah.
Because when you get introduced to Chris, you learn about Chris. You learn that Chris is autistic. That Chris is very obsessed with games and stuff. And then somehow we get a very detailed explanation of Chris's school life, how they had at the time multiple gal pals, as Chris always refers to them as, who then we are found out later Chris's parents were asked the gal pals to be friends with Chris,
Oh,
yeah.
so that
There
Chris had
was-
friends.
There was just like so much personal, intimate detail that I
Yeah.
don't even think I have about my own life.
Yeah, right.
You know?
When there was like a medical record or something, or a psychiatric
it's a
record.
psychiatric evaluation, right? I think it's
How
on
was
the
that?
first episode.
You showed this in your episode of
Right.
Chris, and I just sat there in awe, being like, I don't even know where mine is.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
have one,
Yeah.
I don't.
Like this
where
is
would I get
information that should be like public.
this? Was this all self-published by Chris?
Some of it was the documents, the school papers, the medical records were actually, I guess, illegally taken from their property.
Oh,
At-
wow.
At
Wow.
later points, yeah.
Jeez.
Damn.
It was at a point much later in their life, around 2014. Actually, there was a troll who got into their dumpster
Oh
and,
no.
and took out all the papers.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Fuck you know.
So people have been going to Chris's house and just dumpster diving constantly, just trying to.
That
see what
happened at least once. I don't think many people did that. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
Maybe
isn't
just
it?
one time, yeah. But people do go there and take updated pictures of the house, for example, and their
Right.
and their lawn. Yeah.
Yeah, so as someone who doesn't know much about Chris Chan as a whole topic, so like what are some of the most notable things they've done or that we can mention, I could say that
Yeah.
have like garnered them such a notoriety online.
I mean, at this point, is there anything that they haven't mentioned?
Because for me, I'm just like, okay, so you talk about Chris Chan being like one of the most documented people, probably in history at this point, and just seeing the first part of your documentary, I'm just like, yeah, I can see that. You know?
Yeah.
Like I don't think someone has had such intimate detail be leaked or
Yeah.
put out into a public space before. But like, what are some of how did they gain notoriety in the first place? That's
Yeah.
what I'm so curious about.
All started in 2007 when photos of Chris were posted on 4chan, I think, and then maybe somethingawful.com.
Yeah, I remember
Back
that
then.
forum website.
Yeah, so people connected the dots and showed off the pictures as this is the person who created the Sonichu comics,
Right.
and look at him. It's kind of like a freak gawking.
Right,
in a
which
way,
is
yeah.
Something awful. They used to just like post anything that was awful, quote unquote, what they
Yeah.
thought, and they would
Right,
just
right,
mock
right.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was the thing.
Yeah, so that's how that started. And Chris noticed this and started making videos addressing rumors and correcting the record.
Yeah, I
Right.
believe one of the most worrying things, and is where you could definitely tell this was going to take a turn for the worst in the documentary that you made, is that at some point Chris has this brilliant idea of just releasing everything.
Yeah.
Just handwriting an absurd amount of personal information, probably penis length included at some point in there, you know.
So like the way that she fights back is to basically dox herself.
Yeah, which
other
is a really
words.
strange strategy.
Yes. This was in response to the Encyclopedia Dramatica page, which was made about Chris Chan
Right.
at that time. Yeah. And apparently, according to Chris, they were fed up because they got a lot of details wrong. So I wanted to correct that and add context to the information, which
It just sounds like a disaster.
Yeah.
right?
Basically
Wow.
adding a footnote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all the information.
It's just like you see like a fire and you're just like, let's just pour oil on this.
No, that's not how you burn a fire. Here, let me help you. Jesus.
Yeah, and part he called this task information overload, which
I love that. I love that Chris kept calling it that. It's like, I don't think that's how it works on the internet. Maybe in person, if you read that, I would be like, wait, what?
which I imagine he was kind of like thinking that the Encyclopedia Dramatica page would be like a malfunctioning robot. If you feed it too much information, his head's gonna explode.
Yeah,
or something
right.
like that. He thought that maybe.
That's like feeding a logic bomb to like an AI or
Right.
something, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's like a
it's-
plot to like a movie or something.
And Encyclopedia Dramatica, again, is another drama website, right?
Right.
Where it's just, encyclopedia of people who have done, well, drama things. And it's literally just documented. There's a lot of
There's
people on there.
numerous websites that are horrible like that.
Oh, yeah, it's unfortunate that some people go on there and then correct the record about them.
Yeah.
I still don't think that's an act that's been done. I don't
that's
think most
definitely unprecidented. for
most
sure,
people on
yeah.
there tend to not go on there and say,
Yeah.
"Hey guys, no, I didn't actually do that.
Yeah,
I did this instead." And I think so. That's like the. Correct me if I'm wrong. That is one of the biggest catalysts, right?
That's
to
one-
what
yeah.
kick-started the fascination that people have with Chris.
Yeah, and it basically fed the trolls because they received so much information, so much personal information about Chris, and this included one particular drawing of Chris and their friend at the time, their female friend, being satisfied in a certain way.
Yikes.
And, that got a lot of attention too, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, I think later on, Chris also mentioned, or Christine at that time mentioned that they thought that it was okay to draw sexual pictures of someone because they weren't actually doing the sexual thing to them or something.
Yeah. Also, Chris in a video, or no, Chris in a personal email said that they made that drawing in order to release their certain urges.
Oh my god.
Instead of acting it out in person.
Wait, personal email to who?
Personal email to the female friend.
Oh yeah, justification. I do remember this. This was in a previous episode, right?
Yeah.
So they were like, "Oh, I'm not going to do anything to you. That's
Right.
why I'm drawing stuff, so that I don't do anything to you." Which must be an extremely concerning email to receive.
Is this person just like the human yikes machine? Like what?
Well, that's the problem, is that every time when you watch this documentary or when you're reading about Chris, which is just worrying in itself, every time you want to give Chris a chance and root for Chris, something happens where you're like, fuck.
Yeah, every time she's that close to getting the W, she does something.
Especially
that gives her
earlier
the
on.
L.
I feel like in the start of
Right.
in the history, you very much are rooting for Chris to just stop. Just please, just stop.
Just get
Please.
off the internet, dude.
You know, raising money for charity or something.
Yeah.
You know. And I think there was one turning point for me where I was like, for fuck's sake, when I was watching this, and I think it was. I don't think they do this anymore, but Chris at the time would just say racist things and was quite homophobic very often.
Yep.
And it was just to the point where I was like, you know, and I wonder how much of that was due to the environment that they were raised in. Right?
Possibly, yeah.
And I
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
like it raised very difficult questions where it was like, is this your fault or is this your environment's fault that you
Right.
were raised and you haven't been educated better on
Like,
this
is this how
situation?
you actually are, or were you like orchestrated by people?
Well, it's hard to say, you know,
right?
because I feel that they're a very impressionable person, and I felt like
Yes.
you can definitely tell whatever that was told to them as a child was stuck with them quite a lot.
Right.
So I it's a very conflicting thing, especially because Chris does have autism, quite severe autism.
Yeah.
You almost want to justify certain things, but then every single time you want to justify, well, I'm sure it's, you know, something else happens.
Yeah.
Where you're like, for fuck's sake, I am trying my best to want you to
I'm
do
trying
good.
to be on your
I am
side.
trying my best
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm just like, like that domino meme.
yeah.
Oh,
It is
like-
literally that. It is literally the massive domino.
Like Chris Chan draws Sonic Shoe, and then it ends with sleeping with his mother. Like I'm just like, what happened in between? How did we get to this point? Like,
Because it's I don't even know where to begin about because I do want the viewers to kind of understand the certain milestones, if you will, kind of run through it just
The
so
notable
that,
points.
just so that people can kind of who don't know anything about it can understand roughly the timeline. So in 2007 this all started, correct?
Right.
And I don't know when the trolling saga started, but it felt like it lasted a millennia. So
what's the trolling saga?
I feel like there was like 30 episodes where it was just trolling.
I mean, yeah.
There was
There was 30 episodes, but it was like in the span of 2 years.
Yeah,
chronologically.
it's the problem is that there is. I feel like the recent history of Christine has been very not well known.
I think you meant to say Christery.
The Christery has not
Correct
been.
terminology.
There's not as much essentially. I
Right.
feel like there was a lot more recordings of trolling and stuff, and,
Yeah.
and just the amount of it.
There's a lot still, but it's mostly confined to long Twitter rants and like threads on Twitter, and not that many videos, which I guess is not as entertaining to most people.
So what kind of trolling are we talking about here?
Oh, there's some egregious stuff. Do you want to?
Oh, sure. Things really started to kick off in around 2008, I guess, when trolls decided to pretend to be females online interested in Chris.
The catfish.
Which is,
Right.
yes,
Right.
of course. And that happened many times, actually. Chris kept falling for it every time, which was unfortunate.
Every single time.
Every single time. Yeah.
It's like you'd think, like even it's like how many times
They won't
does this
expect
have
a 10th catfish.
This
right?
is the one.
It's like how many catfishes before you're like, I've seen this one before. This looks awfully familiar. One thing as well that is really concerning about Chris throughout this whole documentary, especially in the earlier years, is just how much Chris wants to have sex.
Yeah, I like that
Yes.
because I think that's like the only way that you could fall for catfish that many times, right? It's that like
It's
he just
very
He
uncomfortable.
just wants a girl.
Yeah, how did he refer to girls at that point? Because I remember there was
Boyfriend free girl.
Boyfriend free girl. We need like an entire encyclopedia. Of just,
This is like
Chris
this
terminology.
podcast will not do it justice. Hopefully, what we can do is give you a basic introduction and a quick rundown of the important events,
Yeah.
and that if you really enjoy or you are extremely intrigued by what you hear, you can go and watch Gino's videos about
Yeah,
it.
please.
But we'll talk about it. And yeah, boyfriend free girl is
Yeah.
one of my favorite phrases of all time.
By the way, that's officially called a quickism,
Oh, okay.
Quickism.
So these are all words that are
used by Chris. Yeah,
Right, right,
invented
right.
by Chris. Kind of. Yeah.
quick. It's like it sounds like a story, like a made up story.
you know,
is,
the thing that's very concerning about Chris throughout the whole thing, especially earlier on, is the way that he talks about sex is very much almost like watching a caveman speak about sex.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I want sex. It's just like there's no
No
emotion.
intimacy.
Yeah,
or
you
anything.
There's
yeah.
no mention of wanting to be close with someone. It's
Yeah.
just I just want to have sex. It's the
It's
vibe
not so
that
much
you
like
get.
I want to make love. It's more like I just want to procreate. kind
Yeah.
of, like vibe, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really strange. And I think that also starts, like you said, it starts the trolling saga, which has some really disgusting points.
Right,
yeah.
Which they start trolling with the catfishing, and then it goes.
We're not at the discussing point yet.
Oh no!
What?
It depends what it depends what flavor of, because I feel like there's a little bit for everyone in terms of disgusting.
What is this, an IGN review?
I,
Just a little something for everyone. Huh?
whichever thing disgusts you the most, at some point Chris has been involved with it.
Yeah.
Like whichever
Probably,
thing,
yeah.
whichever thing disgusts you, whether it be. I think one thing that I think was the first thing that happened that really caught me off guard, and I knew that this documentary was not going in good places. I can't remember if this was the first or what. There is many of the trolls. Correct me if I'm wrong here. They often, when they were pretending to be boyfriend and girlfriend, they would like convince Chris that they were like almost dating.
Right.
Is that right?
Right.
And then they would ask Chris for videos of him doing certain things at the time.
Videos and pictures, yes. Close-up pictures of certain body parts, yes.
Yeah. And I just remember I was taking a bath one time watching this documentary. I was just like cleaning, just chilling, because you have a nice bath in Japan. I was chilling. And I just remember it was like, and then Chris bought the cake and then filmed himself sitting on it. And I was like, what? What? So,
And then you proceed to scrub harder.
and I was like,
I'm not clean enough. I'm not clean enough.
So what? So what was? Why did this all happen?
I think it's just a way to see, would Chris actually do this? just to challenge Chris in a way as well.
Right.
And I guess this also comes as a consequence to the state of the internet at that time, where you could be anonymous a lot more easily.
Yeah, it was very open.
Yeah.
Kind of just sounds like they were limit testing.
Well, it was like that year was like the Wild West as well, where everyone it kind of came
2007,
normal enough.
2008, yeah.
Yeah, mid 2000s internet was terrifying.
Yeah, that was.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
I
crazy
remember
place.
mid 2000s internet, man.
Yeah.
It was literally like the lawless place.
Yeah,
right? Like
because
you could do
I
anything.
think at the time I was mostly on Newgrounds at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
yeah, yeah.
place was truly like, if it was the Wild West, there would be duels happening left and right.
Yeah.
There's people
Yeah.
getting shot down.
Yeah.
And so this was for 2 years mainly. The main.
Mostly 2 years. Yeah.
And was this because Chris was just extremely active in responding, or was it because there was just a lot more of it, like a lot more trolls than there is now? What was the reason why there was just so much in those 2 years, do you think?
Well, it helps that Chris provided many entertaining videos.
Right.
So that kind of created content for them to laugh at. There was this certain group, a very close-knit group called the Private Villa of Corrupted Citizens, which
Like, I don't even know if you're making it up.
it's almost tragic with like
I
the
feel like I'm
lack.
being trolled right now.
No, it's sad that a lot of the trolls sometimes just seem as pathetic as Chris sometimes.
Yeah.
And watching this, you're like, I don't know who's more pathetic. The guy trying to get Chris rubbing a cake in his ass video, or Chris. I can't decide most.
That's how you feel when I'm like talking about fate. Just like,
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah,
what
this
did
is
you just
as
say?
difficult as fate to get into. I think this is the.
Chris Law is more
No,
complex than
yeah. That's, I think Chris Law is in its own world at this
Yeah,
point.
definitely.
Evening Weebs, Baby Man here, and today's episode is sponsored by Honey. You know how these podcast ads go, we read the spiel, blah blah blah, we will give you a promo code at the end, but this one's different, because this is an ad for Honey. And a Honey ad doesn't just give you one promo code, a Honey ad gives you straight up millions of free promo codes. I'm guessing you shop online, and when you go to your favorite shops, Honey will just automatically fill in the promo codes when you're at the checkout. But it won't just dump in one promo code, no. It'll dump every single promo code it can find, and then test them all in second to see if one can give you a discount and the best discount it can find. Plus, Honey knows where to look for promo codes that is hard to find. If you didn't know, pizza is very expensive in Japan, and I often use Honey to get discounts on pizza. I mean, recently I just saved $10 on pizza to, I guess, make it a normally priced pizza anywhere else in the world. So, get all the promo codes you can at joinhoney.com/trashtaste. That's joinhoney.com/trashtaste. Thank you, Honey, for sponsoring this episode. Back to the video.
So this trolling group, the PVCC, which is actually named after a thing in Sonichu, the comic series. So Chris made this name up. It wasn't the trolls. The PVCC was also the name of their community college, or the Piedmont, Virginia Community College, renamed as the Private Villa of Corrupted Citizens, because to Chris, that college symbolized a very dark time in their history, because the dean of the school prevented Chris from posting an attraction sign on the wall asking or looking for a girlfriend.
Chris would often post signs across the school and then also around their area,
Yeah.
just advertising that they
Yeah.
wanted a boyfriend-free girl. Right?
Yes.
Wow.
It's very strange because I think the lack of awareness is just always the Achilles heel when it came to Chris.
Yeah.
And I believe, for example, there was a period where Chris got kicked out of the mall
At least once, yeah.
for putting up signs.
Well, it wasn't signs. It was loitering. I
Loitering?
believe. Loitering
Well,
with like
waiting for a boyfriend-free girl.
right. Yeah. like
Chris would approach people right at the mall.
yes, they would as well, and also maybe throw a rock with the red string attached, and try to like lure a girl in.
You're making this up.
It's called the red string of fate.
Oh, right. That's popular in Japanese culture?
Yeah,
I believe
yeah.
so, yeah.
And like anime and stuff.
Literally,
Yeah,
like your name.
yeah,
You know,
your
that-
name has
Yeah,
it like
yeah,
on the pinky,
The
right?
red
Yeah.
strings of fate,
But
right?
instead of a pinky, it's just a rock. And they just throw at people.
So Chris was literally fishing for girls.
That was at least one attempt at that. Yeah.
Okay.
And then, yeah, Chris was actually very infamously dogpiled on by security guards and thrown in jail, I guess, for a little bit, but then released and then permanently or like temporarily banned from the mall,
Right.
the local mall. So yeah, that was an issue for Chris because that prevented Chris from going to the go-to hotspot for boyfriend-free girls for a time.
I can't ever take it seriously when you say that. And
Because
so-
like, what I find fascinating, right, is that from an outsider looking in, you want to feel sympathetic towards this person
Right.
because they are getting the worst of online trolls,
Yeah.
right? But at some point, you just hear a story about something that they do, and you're just like, what is wrong with you? Like,
it very much pushes
Yeah.
the limit of, how much accountability can
Yeah.
you put on someone,
Yes.
especially when Chris does have like quite severe autism.
yeah,
It's
exactly,
very
right?
difficult to feel like, man, if this was a normal person, this would be totally your fault. But also, how much can you, like I said earlier, like there's so much factors of like you can clearly tell the upbringing
Yeah.
was questionable. Maybe I don't know how good the parenting was. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
a parent; I can't judge.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have to have learned some of these things from somewhere, right?
Yeah. I mean, what for you was like the sympathy line that like Chris like went over the line and you're just like, nope, there's no way I can root for you anymore. If there was,
Well,
one.
were you
if there
ever
was
at the
one?
sympathy line? At
I
all?
mean, I'm not very sympathetic. No,
Yeah.
but
Right.
especially not after the recent events.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
recently,
yeah, of course,
recently
of course.
now it's like there's no sympathy there.
There's like
all sympathy's gone.
the sympathy line is just like in the dust at this point.
But like I said, I remember I was watching it, and there was parts where like I genuinely felt like sympathetic towards Chris,
Yeah.
and I wanted to see Chris do better.
Yeah.
And then there was just a rant about why Chris hated gay people at some point, and I was like, for fuck's sake, like.
Yeah.
But was that orchestrated by the trolls?
No. That was, I believe, a lot of the issues of upbringing with Chris is the parents who
Right.
were very old when Chris was conceived. The father was 54, the mother was 40, so they were already old-timey kind of people who didn't really understand what autism was when
Yeah.
Right.
when Chris was diagnosed with it, and they were kind of afraid of letting Chris go to a special school for autism or to treat it in any way, and just they kind of pretended that it didn't exist and kind of tried it.
Right.
Yeah.
I would be absolutely crushed if I found out my parents asked someone to be friends with me. That would.
Yeah,
I
right?
wonder if that did affect Chris at all. If you,
I don't know. Did Chris even view it that way?
Eventually, they found out. Yeah, but
didn't go.
at the time, they were very happy. It was the happiest time of their life, as they stated many times during their high
Right.
school.
Yeah, it's almost. It's
what's the backstory behind this?
so Chris had a lot of gal pals. Is that correct?
Yes.
In
who
school.
were girls, but not girlfriends. Just friends who are girls.
Platonic
But
relationship.
he did
right.
want
Were
to
they
have some of them
were
to
they
be
boyfriend-free
girlfriends.
girls, or, as you would call it?
And you would see a lot of the pictures of like Chris's earlier birthday parties would be with these gal pals.
Right.
And it later found out that Chris's dad had asked, I believe, maybe their parents or them to be
Yeah.
friends with Chris.
Actually, it was kind of an amazing situation where this was a later trolling attempt. I think at around 2015 or so. Chris themselves tried to organize a high school reunion, so then they would finally meet up with their gal pals one more time. But during this time, trolls decided to pretend to be gal pals, and stated in their emails that their parents only asked them to be friends with them in exchange for like money or good grades or whatever. And then Chris asked their mother, "Is this true?" And then she answered yes. They just coincidentally got it right.
Wow.
Jeez. But like, I'm thinking like because even up until the whole trolling saga point, that I think a lot of these trolls knew already so much information about Chris's
Pouring
backstory
them
and
out.
everything.
Yeah,
Right? So it's
yeah.
like, did they get it right coincidentally, or maybe there was like some hunch being like, well,
guess-
It's also really sad watching. Oh, sorry, go on. I interrupted you. You had a question.
Oh no! I was just saying like I wonder if it was actually a coincidence or not, or maybe they had a hunch of some kind to be like maybe the parents did actually do this, and let's just like run with the story.
I guess it was a hint. Yeah, it means how likely is it for these gal pals to be so close with Chris? Honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
Reality is sometimes harsh, unfortunately.
I think one of the things that
Did you just quote Thanos?
reality is harsh.
Reality is often harsh.
Be whatever I want it to be.
I wasn't even aware because I've never even seen the fucking movie.
You've seen the memes. You've seen the
I've
memes.
seen the memes. I don't remember them.
You know subconsciously.
That meme was living rent free in my head somewhere.
There was The one thing that I felt very sad about watching this documentary is Chris's clear nostalgia and almost want to be back in high school.
Yeah.
And the fact that Chris never grows out of it.
Yeah.
That's what really just felt very sad watching, because this has been going on. We have videos of since Chris was God knows how young and it going up, and just never changes and always wants to be back in high school where things were simple and had gal pals.
Was their high school life good? Probably compared to now, but
So they claim.
Right.
They claim it was great because they had gal pals, and that's it really.
Also, I believe they used to frequent the local game store an awful lot as a child. Is that correct? Or as a
That
teenager?
one I'm not too sure about.
Right.
Personally, yeah.
I feel like people have a lot more patience when you're a child, right? And I felt that Chris had a lot of luxuries, probably the fact that people would probably, they wouldn't question a lot of things, and they would also be very patient with some things, I'd imagine, that people aren't really when you're an adult. People get kind of scared. Like there was a whole arc, if you will, with Chris in the game store,
Yes.
where Chris ended up... an arc.
There's arcs in the story.
There's multiple arcs. So Chris how did this start with Chris in the game store? Could you try to explain this rough arc to Gaunt?
Chris went to a local game store where they played games and bought games.
Pokemon trading card tournaments.
Trading cards, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I could play, games on the TV as well on the Wii at that time, I believe. And that's where they met their female friend, which they later drew in a certain way.
Through a rock.
Yeah.
Reeled her in.
So yeah, in this game place, Chris really liked this female friend and got way too touchy several times, way too many times, even though she addressed this in emails privately, but Chris continued to do so, and eventually that relationship fell out after the image was leaked by Chris themselves. So
It's like who leaked all this information? It's always Chris.
It's always Chris. Yeah.
So yeah, and after that point, Chris still continued to go to the game store for a little bit longer before they started causing way too much trouble with the manager getting very annoyed by their constant hogging of the TV, of the games, possibly even shouting racial slurs at the African American children. So
Yikes.
Every single time you want to root for Chris, just so you hear something and you're like, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Fuck.
I get it if Chris tried to approach the girl, to be like, yeah, I just want to be in a nice relationship with
Sexually
you,
harassing.
not in a weird way kind of thing. And then they're just like, no, I'm going to do the worst thing possible to try and move this forward, move the relationship forward.
Had to be racist towards kids? Really?
Yeah.
Really? Anyway.
It's like being a nuisance is one thing. Hogging the TV is one thing.
It's like
There's only one thing worse than a racist: a child.
Yeah, true. It's like a comic book villain at times.
Yeah.
It's like a Darman video, right? Just like it's so textbook racist, or in some ways where it's like you can't make this up.
Yeah.
No one would act like this.
Yeah.
And so anyway, carry on the game store.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were banned, and after about 9 months, I believe, Chris made a video on YouTube addressing the manager of the game store,
Right.
thinking that if you put his name in the title of the video, he would just magically see it and see this video addressed to him.
Well, like the manager's real name in the title.
Honestly, yeah.
Because people just going onto YouTube and just typing out their full name, being like, who's made a video about me?
Yeah.
Maybe if it wasn't like his name in the title at all, it was like the stock DV, like SMQ005 or whatever. Chris started the video with, this video is addressed to the manager of the game store, blah blah blah, and please let me back. I learned my lesson, like that.
I remember this. Yeah, I do remember this.
Right.
And the manager was like, no.
Yeah, that like about half a year maybe after that, Chris was convinced by a troublesome gal pal or a girlfriend online to go back to the game store and try to get themselves unbanned.
Right.
They actually recorded the conversation privately on their person,
Of course.
because Chris's girlfriend at the time, as far as they knew, thought it would be a very good idea, and they would be able to threaten the manager with you said this, and I don't know, tried
Yeah.
Right, so uses blackmail.
to blackmail
Right,
me,
right,
right,
right.
And then the manager said no, and just kicked him out again. And I think threatened to call the police. And then on the way out, Chris called the manager a Jew, and that's the end of
You
that.
know what I mean? You see what I mean?
Jesus.
Okay, and then that happened, right? Yeah.
That happened. And then other things happened. Yes, about another year after that, Chris went back to the store with their mother, actually. And this was after their elderly father had died already.
Right.
So they went back to the store because they saw a new banner up on the store saying under new management or under a new owner, and they realized that the manager of the store now became the owner of the store and became angry again. They were kicked out, and on the way out, the manager of the store was run over by Chris's car twice. See, the thing was...
Not accidentally, right? Like,
Well, the thing was, we're not really sure what was the order of the situation, but both Chris's mother and Chris themselves were driving the car, and
Right.
each took a turn to run over the game.
This is pretty horrible. This sounds like a fucking
It's
Looney
fucked
Tunes
up.
skit.
It's so you can't make this up.
It actually sounds like a Looney Tunes skit.
Right,
at this
right,
point.
So I'm not sure who did it first. Like, did Chris accidentally do it, and then
Swap.
and then-
Oh, your turn. Finish the job, please, mother.
or maybe they thought that like the second time the other person driving would like cover for them, you know, like
Right. You take
Right.
the
you
blame.
weren't driving. It was me. So then let's run over him twice. But anyway, yeah, they were both
Was
charged
it-
with manslaughter. No, it wasn't.
Manslaughter.
No, it wasn't manslaughter. It was like grievous bodily harm, or I don't know.
Was the sauna owner okay?
The owner was okay actually, and he actually wanted the charges to be dropped or at least lessened.
Damn.
oh,
Yeah.
what a nice manager. After
If someone
all
ran
the
me
shit
over-
they went through.
Yeah.
So we got racism, homophobia, hit and run. Like, is this person just speed running hate crimes now?
Yeah.
Like, what's,
Oh, there's more. There'll be more.
No, she's trying to like 100% hate crimes. Isn't it? Like getting the Xbox achievement, man.
It's like a bingo list of crimes. It is shocking how many you can accidentally commit when
Yeah.
you're not really
Is
aware.
Chris Chan the original gamer?
The completionist.
Oh God!
I mean, some people might say that Chris might be the first Let's Player in a way.
Yeah, because Chris did videos of
Chris
Little Big Planet.
Chris made a video on Little Big Planet back in 2002 or 3.
Wow.
And they were narrating their actions over it, which makes like
That's a Let's
this is,
Play.
like one of the first Let's Plays ever. Yeah.
Holy shit.
And that review was actually published in the Nintendo Game Magazine. Or was it Nintendo Power? Was it?
Nintendo Power.
Yeah, it was published
discontinued,
there.
Right?
wow.
Actually published. Actually, Chris had 2 things published in Nintendo Power over the course of their life.
It was like an Animal Crossing video, if I remember correctly.
It was Animal Crossing. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Wow.
And they were talking about what they were doing. And one of the first things that Chris did during their narration in that video was saying that they were a high-functioning autistic virgin.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
remember.
This is something that Chris often mentioned very often. It was,
Yeah.
I'm a high-functioning autistic virgin. Which, you know, when you watch it, it's like, what?
Yeah,
You're just not used to hearing
that's
that.
like 4 words I didn't think I would hear
Yeah.
next to each other.
Or someone self-proclaim.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
you know, which is just, it's bizarre. And the whole, like I said, there's arcs, right? There's
Yeah.
just, and the game store is over like 10 years. No, it's quite a long time, if I remember correctly.
About 5 years, yeah.
It's quite a long
The
time.
game store arc.
And also watching these this documentary, it's kind of, because it's all in chronological order. It's concerning how often stuff gets revisited and Chris tries again.
So what other arcs are there?
Well, like I said, the trolling one feels like it lasts forever.
Yeah.
The initial, I mean, Chris is always being trolled with.
Did it
I
ever
find.
stop, though?
It didn't really, but there was like, I feel
that
like,
was like the 4th Ninja War arc then.
it was,
It's just
Kept going.
yeah, it's like the manga arc that you wish ended like 10 years ago
Yeah,
that just
yeah.
kept on going. And like, you know, there's some really abhorrent trolling that was done. And again, like some of it is so bad that I do still feel sorry for Chris. Like, you know, wouldn't he shove stuff up his, you know, his member at the time?
Up his member?
Did he do that? Or was it his butt?
It was the butthole.
Which isn't very good.
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah. But yeah, this was a very unfortunate, very dark episode in,
Yeah.
in Chris's life where Chris believed that their girlfriend at the time was being kidnapped by their evil brother or whatever. And also their PlayStation Network account was also being hacked and held hostage. So Chris had to choose which one would you prefer to save, your girlfriend or your PSN account.
At which
Which they chose.
Chris chose the girlfriend, but by choosing so, Chris believed that they would get both because they made the right choice.
like a Bible, you made the right choice.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was the £5
Yeah,
note.
it's the money on the Bible. It's the money on the Bible. You get both if you pick the Bible.
Wow.
But yeah, during the course of this debacle, Chris was tasked with either, I think, burning their Sonichu medallion, which they fashioned out of like Play-Doh or a clay.
Yeah.
Very iconic piece
Yeah.
of.
Either burn it or put it up their butthole. So Chris chose to cut it up into smaller pieces first because it was too big.
Of course, totally
Yeah, don't
understandable.
burn it at that point.
Yeah.
It's already destroyed, but don't burn
Yeah,
it.
don't
Put it up your
burn
butt.
You can put it back together afterwards, right?
What was the logic behind cutting it up instead of burning it? Is this ever explained?
No.
It's just like, what if you're destroying it? Why not choose the option of destroying it?
Well, because you can still put it back together, right?
Maybe
Was that the thinking?
maybe Chris thought that they didn't have access to matches.
Oh,
I'm not sure. I really don't know. Which is kind of ironic,
Yeah,
given
sorry.
what happens later. But
Yeah.
Wait, what happens later?
No, we'll save it. We'll save
so
it. Wait,
invested.
you don't know?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
It's like one of the most biggest plot points in the whole story.
We haven't even got to the plot twist.
I'm so invested in this
It's
story.
like
I'm
one of
like-
the most well-known parts of the
Right.
story.
I might know it
is
if,
it?
if you remind me.
Maybe we'll talk about it later.
it's in part 39, by the way. So
Part 39. I remember because this was the part that I was waiting for to happen because I'd heard so much about it and I wanted to know. I know, it's insane. It's insane. So, yeah, Chris put the thing up their butt and
butt. Yeah.
filmed it. And obviously in your version, you censor it for the...
I believe it was like a Skype call or something. So the person acting as the girlfriend and also the evil twin brother, they were the same 13-year-old boy, by the way.
13-year-old boy.
13-year-old.
13-year-old boy doing this.
What?
So yeah, after the shoving, they revealed themselves to be a 13-year-old boy and that the girl never existed, which distraught Chris. There were other
naturally.
yeah, there were other members of that trolling group in the call, but just listening and being muted. But after that, they came out and said, "Jesus, stop!" Like they knew that.
Yeah, I remember this. Yeah.
They knew that this boy went way too far, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so disgusting that you know that only like a sick kid would ask someone to do this.
Yeah.
When I was 13, I think I was just playing Jenga or something. I don't know what the fuck I was doing. I certainly wasn't thinking about that. I wonder, like, how do these kids do this?
Right?
That's like throughout this thing, it's almost as much as Chris was doing some really abhorrent stuff. I almost find that everyone involved was also very guilty of doing some
Right, of
really
course.
heinous things.
Yeah.
And it felt like anyone who went near this like cesspit of drama was just dragged into doing really horrible stuff.
Honestly, the entire thing just sounds like a shit show. Like
It's like a wor-
figuratively and literally.
Yeah.
Like
It is the worst part of the internet in
Yeah.
every aspect.
Yeah.
It shows every single terrible thing a troll can do. It shows the terrible nature of what feeding trolls does.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think there's, and that's why it's almost hard to look away because it's
Yeah.
so fascinating.
It's such a magnificent train crash, right? That you just like,
Right. Yeah.
it's like
the train crashes and does 10 backflips and then lands and then
Right.
catches fire.
Yeah.
It's just almost like everything that it's just so insane. And I think that's why, again, you should go and watch Gino's video on it. Or videos.
Wait, well, hold on. Like you guys like blue ballsing me with this like plot
All right,
point
okay,
right here.
okay.
Like I need to know.
So there's the whole
Is this
trolling
the best
thing.
arc?
I don't know. Is this the best arc?
So yeah, go on.
So yeah, so the trolling with the fake girlfriends thing went on for quite a while, pretty much until Chris's father died.
Right.
When
This was 2 years, right?
about 2 or 3 years, yeah. So after that, they decided, let's leave Chris alone. They've suffered enough, I guess. I guess that was their thinking.
Yeah, 2 years later, I think we've done enough damage.
Yeah.
I think this is enough. Like, no, it
Yeah.
should have been stopped at the medallion being
right.
shoved up.
Yeah, so there was a solid year where Chris didn't do much except occasional Facebook posts. Yeah, and then fast forward to 2014, where in the middle of the night, Chris was, I believe, trying to make a cup of coffee, and the extension cable which connected to their coffee maker, it was like draped over the bathroom door, and like the constant opening and closing like damaged the wire. It caught fire. The house caught fire. Yeah, it was a.
You also have to understand that at this time, Chris's house is a hoarder's house.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
So,
okay.
you know, when you hoard stuff, your house just goes up in flames.
Yeah, of course.
That was the problem, is the reason why this was so jank, and the reason why the coffee machine was so fucked to begin with, is because there was no floor space.
right.
Right.
And I believe
Yeah.
there was 2 or 3 cats inside this hoarder's
yeah.
house.
Yeah, it was.
no.
Did the cats? I don't know if the cats. I assume the cats unfortunately didn't make it.
One cat died. Yeah.
Now I'm sad.
That's what's so sad about this, is that, you know, in some aspects you kind of don't feel sorry that Chris ruined their own life, you know, because you almost, you know, this is done by yourself.
Yeah.
But I think the most unfortunate part about this is not only is Chris's parents and dragged into all of this mess, but also pets as well.
Yeah, just like other, you know, like innocent bystanders just got involved.
You know, this
unfortunately,
manager
you know?
got ran over. You know,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
many
Right.
points in this story that are so sad. Just for, again, it's like a vacuum. If you're involved with Chris in any way, generally not good stuff was happening. Yeah, and the hoarder's house. There's pictures of it. I'm assuming you can show it on screen, right? It's totally fun.
Yeah, probably fine.
It's fine. This is what it looks like. It's pretty bad. It's very, very
So
bad.
was Chris the hoarder, or was it the
Chris
parents?
was mostly not the hoarder. Actually, Chris's room was the most tidy.
mother, right?
It was Chris's mother. Yeah, she was the hoarder, and actually resulted in a pretty, I guess, infamous video of Chris, who after posting a house tour video on YouTube,
Which is insane to think that you would post a tour of that.
Yeah.
right, for a girl, obviously,
Right.
girl, as far as Chris knew.
Yeah.
Chris's father found out and demanded that Chris take down the video off of the internet, which was kind of an impossible task for Chris
Yeah.
to do. Yeah. And then during the recording session where Chris was shouting at the camera and all the trolls to take it down now, Chris's father walks in and they have this little discussion about Chris saying about Chris's father saying, you know, if the health department sees this video, we're gonna be evicted. You know, you just stuck a knife in our backs and killed us with your video is what he said. Yeah.
Right.
So it was very
Jesus.
crazy video. Yeah.
When you're watching this video, you have to watch the video to get a real horrible sense of scale of this. It is essentially like a jungle gym. You can't, like, even the camera doesn't, you can't see anything. There's just
Right.
junk everywhere. And it's just too zoomed in.
Yeah.
So every time you're like looking around, you can't get a sense of scale of anything because there's just so much stuff. And obviously, you know, hoarders' houses are basically just fire hazards. I mean, that's the reason why you get evicted, because you can't do that.
That's exactly what happens, right?
Yeah.
Cockroaches, probably also. I believe the cats were also sick at the time. Is that right? Or they weren't?
I wouldn't be surprised.
You can't
There
be
were-
healthy.
Yeah.
There were other later cats who became sick in the house. Yeah.
Right. I remember watching a video when they moved to the new place, which was it provided by the government?
There was a new temporary rental place. Yeah, that was provided by the house insurance agency. Yeah.
And I remember there was a point in this video where you could hear the cat, and it sounded like it was dying.
God.
It sounded very bad.
Dogs too. Honestly.
Yeah, the dogs as well, right?
No, leave the animals
Yeah,
out of
right.
it.
It's a horrible story, you know, and I think it puts into. You often ask the question of, like, how ethical is it to watch all this stuff and document it and talk about it? Is that something that you often struggle with when you're
Yeah.
making these videos?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing about your video that I could get is that it seemed like you weren't. It was just pure documentation. You know?
Right.
You weren't putting your opinion into it. It was just pure. This is what happened, and this is just a pure documentation of things you can already find on the internet.
Yeah, it's kind of just
Exactly, yeah.
like, you know, just laying out the information and kind of leaving it up to the viewer to make their own opinions about the whole case,
For
whatever
better or
it
for
might
worse.
be, right?
Yeah.
For better or for worse.
Because I think that's what really attracted me to your videos, is that, again, there was just no input from you, but also made you kind of a mysterious figure.
Yeah.
It's like you always start the video saying, like, who is Chris? What drives it? I'm like, who's Gino? Why is he making this video? Like, which is why I wanted to bring you on, because I really wanted to learn more about you as well, and what drives you to make these videos. Because I feel like, you know, it takes a mental toll, I imagine, having to document this stuff. And there are some lines that you have to say out loud because you narrate Chris's words.
Yeah.
and I there's some very funny out of context clips of you being like just shouting really funny stuff, about
Yeah.
putting stuff up your ass.
Yeah.
Sorry, I hate to do you like that.
It's the burden he has to bear.
Yeah.
It is the burden.
At which point were you just like committed to like? I mean,
Yeah.
With that, where you were just committed to, I assume, completing this thing. I mean, you've gotten this far, right?
I mean, I was committed since the beginning.
Yeah.
I imagine I was not expecting this to last this long, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do understand that some parts may be a bit boring for some, and just the constant maybe Facebook like readings of a Facebook posts or tweets, for example, which I do cut down as well, but I find it interesting and relevant to the story, which is a kind of
It's all right.
kind
man.
of a conflict for me.
Every anime has its filler arc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I find that's what makes your video so compelling is that it almost feels like no stone is left unturned. Like every single thing is included. Is that fair to say that you include pretty much everything?
Not really.
Oh, really?
Most things that are really not interesting or not relevant to the
Even
development
remotely,
of
yeah.
the story, then yeah, I do skip over them.
So how much stuff is, when you have the episode,
Yeah.
how much stuff in between like tweets or Facebook posts is cut? Like if you had to give like a ratio of like how much information makes it in to not in the video.
Possibly about 1% doesn't make it in.
Oh, so nearly everything else goes in. It's like literally everything goes in. All right. Wow.
I mean, it depends on how much detail on how much time I spend on it. Like, for example, if it's a vaguely interesting tweet, for example, I just mentioned that Chris talked about this, or like if it's more compelling, if it's more interesting, I just read word for word most of it, for example. So I spend more.
Yeah, because
more
I was
time
about
on
to
it.
say, like, if you had said, like, about 20%, that would have been like, Jesus, how much content is there on this person? My
A worrying
God.
amount, a worrying
yeah, right?
amount.
Like,
Yeah.
I already watch your videos and I go, my God, this is more information than, several generation
Yeah.
families that, have on the internet, let alone just this one single person.
Oh God, I remember. What year did Chris transition?
2014, I believe.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And it is a very disturbing phase.
Yeah, that's what I
where-
want to, like, what
Disturbing
led, like, what
phase.
led
Yeah,
to the
there's a lot of
transition, I guess.
stuff that Chris does, and later Christine.
Oh.
They're very like worrying, I'd say.
Right.
Well, that happened a lot.
What's the line of worrying?
Yeah. I've already heard a lot of
happened a lot
boring
later.
things this episode.
So how did it start? We know that. How did all of it begin with Chris?
The transitioning.
Yeah.
yeah.
Chris very early on exhibited some interest in being a female.
Uh-huh.
Like for example, writing on public posts in a troll created forum, which was made to appear like a fan site for Chris Chan, but they're all just trolls.
Yeah.
Uh,
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Chris said that sometimes they thought that maybe life would have been better if they were born as a female, but since I was born since like God delivered this package, I must like feel it. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
Chris sounded a lot more poetic than I do.
Yeah. Well, of course.
But
Very
yeah,
poetic.
then Chris started leaking some. Chris was sending nude photos to other girlfriends,
As you do.
which I featured Chris trying on their mother's underwear bra as well.
Right.
So that was worrying as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after that, another girlfriend convinced Chris that maybe they would feel better jogging because they were very self-conscious about their man boobs bouncing around. So so she suggested maybe Chris should wear a sports bra. And then Chris discovered that they really liked the feeling of a sports bra, and pretty much never took it off after that point, honestly, until they transitioned and started wearing women's underwear full time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like some people suggest that maybe Chris was influenced by trolls saying some quote exactly that Chris was convinced to become a female to explore their feminine side.
Right.
This is questionable. No one's really sure how this happened. But yeah, Chris started first identifying as like a lesbian soul in male body, something like that.
Okay.
Right.
I'm not very well educated on this stuff. It's very.
Yes.
I try to, but it's quite a lot of information.
Yeah.
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 And after about another half a year or so, they fully embraced the identity of the new name, Christine,
Okay.
and changed their gender officially, even on their driver's license. So it's quite legit at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they do use gender transitioning medication as well.
Okay.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I say concerning because during the first phase, it was very much a DIY transitioning.
That wasn't the first phase, actually. That was,
Was it
like,
not?
That was quite a bit after.
Oh,
that.
was it? Oh,
yeah.
I felt like that because that was what stuck out to me. As,
What goes before DIY?
well, so
Well, Chris decided to expedite matters by listening to binaural beats on YouTube.
what is
which-
binaural beats? I still don't know what that is.
Binaural beats is a type of like a humming noise that's supposed to influence the way your mind works and kind
Yeah.
of change you in a certain way. Like, for example,
It uses
Change-
like a certain frequency, I
Yeah.
believe, that it almost acts as like a type of hypnosis
Right.
of sorts.
Is it a load of? Is it bullshit? Is it?
There is actually science behind
Is
it.
this a well-known thing? This is the first I'm hearing of this.
No, this is very much like a music, like.
Is it really a real
community
thing?
type of thing.
I mean-
there is some science behind it, but like the whole thing of like hypnosis and stuff like that is very debatable.
Yeah.
I mean, binaural beats making you like feel uncomfortable or comfortable. Yeah, I can see that happening, but changing you from male organs to female sexual organs, then
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Chris was trying.
Yeah.
Chris was trying to grow boobs.
boobs, and then Chris was actually going to the actual channel of these binaural beats and asking the uploader, will this binaural beats video cause my testicles to develop into ovaries, or will they make another video about that, or Stuff like
Answer: No.
That's very sad because in some aspects this is where other aspects of the internet failed Chris, right? Like this is a predatory thing to, and I don't know if they encouraged or they said that you'll grow boobs from listening to this beat.
Yeah.
That's bullshit. But it
Yeah.
also, when you're desperate enough, as I imagine Chris was at the time, you'd be willing to believe it.
I mean, I'm sure Chris has fallen for more obvious stuff with like because this was after the trolling phase,
Right.
right?
Right. And didn't Chris end up in hospital for trying to? So this is a very disturbing
Yes.
thing. They believed that the opposite sex organs were inside. All they had to do was cut it open, and they did indeed do that, right? And they ended up in hospital.
what they cut was the space in between the
The douche, right?
I believe that's
I believe that's a way to call it. Yes.
I think it's called the gooch.
I think it's called the gooch. Yeah.
Oh, it was
The
douche,
gooch?
yeah, gooch, the gooch. Sorry.
Skin between the balls and the butt, right?
Yeah, they cut
Right,
it.
that one.
Pretty deep cut, right?
They cut.
The
perineum.
perineum.
I don't fucking know. I'm not educated on this. I don't touch that place often.
It is the perineum, also called the taint.
The taint.
Oh,
yeah.
The taint. So that's the space between the hole and the
I'm so sorry,
sack?
viewers. I'm so sorry.
We're
So-
using scientific terms here.
yeah. Chris believed that in this space was where their labia would be if they were born as a woman.
So they
So they cut it open and
Oh.
posted photos.
they posted photos.
Oh yes.
What?
Wait, of after the act? Like after they cut
What,
it?
it must look like a crime scene.
Jesus.
Looks fine to me. I don't know.
You poor man.
Gino's like, I've seen worse.
I can't tell if you've been broken by all of this. You've been so numb to it for so long.
Like a war veteran now.
Yeah.
It's like this doesn't
Murder.
even faze me
Do you know
anymore.
what sound a man makes when they die? I do, and I like it. They went to hospital for it, right?
They were very reluctant to go to the hospital because they
They were
thought
infected, right?
it could have been.
It was
It
left
could have been
long
could've
enough
died,
to be
honestly.
infected.
Yeah.
From what I understand, it was very worrying.
It could have like
Yeah, no shit.
they could like cause like abscess or something, and
Yeah.
then died from it eventually. But yeah, eventually trolls convinced Chris to go to the hospital and get it checked.
Oh,
Right.
the trolls convinced Chris to go
Right.
to the hospital.
Which is weird because then later on, I'd say from this point onwards is where it used to be like kind of like a almost torture hostage situation.
Yeah.
Where it was like, I want to torture you, but I want to keep you alive.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the trolls, and I believe especially what happened later on, is the founding member of the Kiwi Farms.
Right.
Often would financially look after Chris and would help
Yes.
manage Chris's finances.
Right. That,
They
wasn't there like later there was like a group of people, right?
People
who
would
were,
often they did a GoFundMe, correct, after the
were they called
something
the
after
Watchmen or something? Was that what they called?
The Watchman is a different thing.
Oh, okay, that's a different thing.
This is insane. So these people who had originally were trolling Chris ended up then
Supporting him.
supporting Chris and almost being protective over who can have contact with
Right.
Chris, right?
Yes, they were. Yeah.
It's weird, right? Because it feels like a hostage thing. Where it's
Yeah.
like, I'm going to feed you food and take care of you, but you're still my hostage.
Right.
And I
like
won't
the
let you.
weirdest cult I've ever heard.
It's
of.
very strange.
Yeah. The thing is after Chris's father died, the main trolls behind all that kind of stopped their trolling and then moved on to Kiwi Farms just like as an observation kind of thing and looking after
Right,
Chris.
right,
But
right.
like the other trolling that happened after that point was made by other people, which were not affiliated really with the original core.
Which is
of the
then there's like
trolls.
tons of different factions of
Right.
people who are obsessed with
Yeah.
with
So
Chris.
who are the Watchmen?
The Watchmen was a group
I believe
created.
it's a comic drawn by Frank Miller.
Pretty poor at movie adaptation apparently.
Yeah.
honestly.
Comic was definitely better.
Sorry, go ahead.
Watchmen's not that long of a movie. Anyway, Watchmen were a group which were created for the sole purpose of protecting Chris,
Right.
which did not work at all. They're broken up at this point when it was revealed that some members of the Watchmen were actively involved with trolling Chris.
Oh my god.
Backstabbing the Watchmen.
Well, this is why it's such a fucking mess. Like every
Yeah.
single person involved is, has questionable motives.
Yeah, because I only found out about the Watchmen from the recent events.
Yes.
Right. And there's like 3 or 4 other groups or something that were all involved in all this stuff, and they all have their own names and stuff like that. and-
When did documenting Chris really reach its peak of popularity?
Peak of popularity.
Well, now it's very popular.
yeah.
Yeah.
But before this, I definitely felt like there was an increase of people who are benefiting and profiting off of Chris in many ways by making content around Chris in a almost harmful way.
This
Yeah.
is definitely a more recent phenomenon in the past few years,
Yeah.
I think.
Which is, I feel like, where it started. It was kind of improving,
Yeah.
and Chris was not really involving much, and people were not really trolling Chris as much. And then when the popularity of documenting Chris, I swear it feels like it then started going backwards, and this trolling starting to get worse again. And
Kind of coincides with the Idea Guys saga, no?
the Idea Guys,
The Idea Guys.
what's that?
It's another group, another trolling group, which
course.
How many trolling groups are there? It is absurd
I
amount.
just love the names.
there's
The names are
a
great.
there's a new one every month.
Yeah, okay. So the Idea Guys.
So the Idea Guys were very detrimental to Chris's psyche because they convinced Chris that all these different alternate realities, alternate dimensions of like anime land and all these cartoons actually existed, and you could travel to them
They were the
interdimensionally.
ones.
Yeah, they were
Okay,
the ones.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so
and to this day, Chris still believes
Chris
that
still believes that
they
yeah.
can access this different dimension.
Yes, and Chris actually believed that at some points they were possessed by like Sonichu and other characters
And
as
that
well.
they were Sonichu, right?
right
Or something like that.
Like they were like it was Sonichu speaking through their body for like a solid
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
it's a bad omen.
One of the Shishi was just like, all right, I'm going to yeet out. This is a bit too much for me, man.
Anyway, Sonichu was apparently talking through Chris's body for about half a year, honestly.
It's just like you
Maybe
can't
even more.
explain. Like it's so hard to keep up with this because even when we watch the whole series in depth, it is so confusing and there's so much stuff. And we've barely even touched on the fact that one of the main aspects of what Chris was doing was making a comic about Sonichu and all the stuff was.
That's what really started the whole attention
Yeah.
on Chris because their comic was so crazy and outlandish, and people realized that Chris was actually using the comic as a way to live out their own fantasies.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, like getting
Like a self-insert.
like
Yeah.
a self. Well, there was a self-insert, yeah,
Main character was Chris.
basically.
okay.
So they believed they were Sonichu.
Right.
Yeah, right,
for
right.
a little bit.
And then there were other characters as well, right? From what I remember, there was like Rose Chu and stuff.
Rose
like that.
Chu is Sonichu's love interest and wife. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also, I believe Chris also at many points would include real people that would die or would,
Yeah. Yeah, like
principal or something, right?
there would be the main villains, but no one actually died actually
Oh.
in Chris's comics because Chris believed that Quickville was real, and they didn't want to cause that much harm to the characters because they would feel hurt.
Right. Right.
You know, they really believed this. There was,
I say right, but like I
I totally
Yeah,
understand.
yeah,
I totally understand what's being said here.
Yes.
I'm totally following what's going on right now.
Also, one other thing that I also found very worrying was Chris's spending
Yes.
and lack of financial.
Okay, where did Chris get an income from? Now I'm curious.
Chris has a social security or disability payment called
Okay.
which Chris calls the tugboat. It's about $800 a month.
Okay.
And this is what Chris uses to pay off credit card debts and buy Legos, which brings him in which brings Chris into more debt.
Right.
Chris gets money and immediately spends it on like toys, Legos,
Yeah.
anything.
right.
Yeah.
Which is very disturbing because I think Chris's mother at the time wasn't working either, very old,
Yeah.
needed, and they were mainly relying on the income that
the
Chris was
mother must
bringing
have
in.
already
Right?
been like retired at that point.
Oh, they
right?
were. Yeah, no one's been working in that family since the 90s, I believe.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
a very, very chilling video later on where Chris is getting their mother to promote Chris's selling of merchandise
Yes.
and saying that they need money for food
Yeah.
and stuff.
Right.
There's several videos like that. Honestly.
It's very concerning
Yeah.
stuff.
Like merch is in like what?
Handmade merch by Chris.
Oh, it's like the Sonic Shoe medallions and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, there were
That's all?
medallions. There
Yeah.
were signed photos, I believe, as well, and stuff like that. Yeah.
Jeez.
It's all very concerning
and I
stuff.
assume it's the trolls that are buying that kind of stuff.
I mean-
right? Just to like fuel the fire, I guess.
At this point, are they really trolls? Are they just like almost like fans?
Super
now?
fans.
People
Yeah.
want to get in on
It
it.
kind of sounds like a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah,
you know,
right?
Where Chris feeds the trolls and the trolls feed
Feed
Chris.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't end. Yeah.
Yeah.
And by acquiring objects